The auction hall fell silent as the auctioneer's hammer struck 3 times. Eva Bellini stood trembling on the marble platform, her wrists bound, her literature textbooks now scattered across an apartment she'd never see again. 50 million. 75 million. The bids climbed as faceless men appraised her like livestock. Then the double doors exploded open. Dante Rinaldi entered, 6 feet of controlled violence in a tailored suit, his presence commanding instant submission. He didn't glance at the other bidders. His dark eyes locked onto Ava's terrified gaze. $100 million, he announced, his voice cold as winter stone. The bidding is over. Before we begin this story of power, captivity, and unexpected redemption, hit that like button and comment with your city below, so I can see how far this tale travels across the world. The price of a life. The morning Eva Bellini's life shattered began like any other Thursday in Milan. She sat in the corner of Caffè Letterario, her favorite cafe near the Università degli Studi, surrounded by dog-eared paperbacks and a notebook filled with half-finished story ideas. At 22, Eva lived in the margins, overlooked, underestimated, invisible to most people who passed her on the street. She preferred it that way. Her world consisted of literature classes, weekend shifts at a bookstore, and the precious hours she spent sketching in Parco Sempione, imagining characters for novels she dreamed of writing someday. Her phone buzzed against the scarred wooden table. Papa. She frowned. Her father rarely called during the day. Papa, is everything all right? The silence on the other end stretched too long. When Marco Bellini finally spoke, his voice carried a tremor she'd never heard before. Eva Piccola mia, I need you to come home, right now. What's wrong? Are you sick? Please, just come home. The line went dead. Ava's coffee sat forgotten as she gathered her books with shaking hands. Her father, usually so jovial, so full of terrible jokes and bear hugs, had sounded terrified. She caught the next tram across the city, watching Milan's elegant architecture blur past the windows while dread coiled tighter in her stomach. Their apartment occupied the 3rd floor of a tired building in Porta Romana, nothing like the grand residences near the Duomo. Ava took the stairs 2 at a time, her messenger bag banging against her hip. The door stood slightly ajar. Papa? She pushed inside and froze. Her father sat at their small kitchen table, his face ashen, his hands clasped before him as if in prayer. But he wasn't alone. 2 men in expensive suits flanked him, one lean and sharp-featured, the other built like a concrete wall. Neither smiled. Ava, her father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What's happening? Who are these people? The lean man studied her with cold calculation, his gaze traveling from her worn canvas sneakers to her oversized cardigan to the paint stain on her jeans. Miss Bellini, your father has found himself in a difficult financial situation. Financial situation? Ava looked between the strangers and her father's anguished face. Papa, what is he talking about? Marco Bellini seemed to age a decade in that moment. I made mistakes, Ava. Terrible mistakes. I thought I could fix things, make back what I lost, but I only made it worse. How much worse? 3 million euros, the lean man supplied smoothly. Plus interest accrued over 18 months. Your father borrowed from my employers to cover gambling debts. He promised collateral he didn't possess. He made guarantees he couldn't keep. 3 million euros. The number was so absurd that Ava almost laughed. Her father managed a small import business that barely kept them fed. Where would he get 3 million euros? There has to be some mistake, she said. We don't have that kind of money. We've never had that kind of money. Precisely the problem. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Which is why we're here to collect alternative compensation. Something in his tone made Ava's skin crawl. She backed toward the door. I think you should leave. We'll contact a lawyer, work out some kind of payment plan. The concrete wall of a man moved faster than seemed possible for someone his size. He blocked her exit, his massive frame filling the doorway. Papa? Ava's voice climbed higher. I'm sorry, her father whispered again, and she saw tears streaming down his weathered face. I thought I had more time. I thought I could fix this before they came for you. Came for me? What does that mean? The lean man stood, adjusting his cufflinks with practiced precision. Your father offered you as collateral, Miss Bellini. When he couldn't repay his debt, he signed papers transferring certain rights to our organization. That's insane. You can't just trade people. You'd be surprised what's possible when proper channels are observed. The documents are all legally binding. Your father's signature, witnessed and notarized. You belong to us now. The room tilted. Ava grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Papa, tell me this isn't real. Tell me you didn't. I had no choice. Marco surged to his feet. They were going to kill me, Ava. They were going to cut me apart and dump me in the Naviglio. I thought if I just had more time, I could win it back, make everything right. So you sold your daughter? Ava's voice broke. You sold me to criminals? We prefer to think of ourselves as debt collectors, the lean man said, though the distinction hardly matters at this point. Collector. Everything happened too fast. The large man grabbed Ava's arm with bruising force. She screamed, kicking and clawing, her literature books scattering across the floor. Her father shouted something, but the words dissolved into chaos. She caught glimpses of her small life. The bookshelf she'd painted mint green, the photographs of her mother who'd died when Ava was 8, the sketch of Sforza Castle she'd been so proud of, all of it fragmenting as she was dragged toward the door. Let me go! Someone help! Help! A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, chemical sweet and suffocating. Ava fought to hold her breath, but her lungs eventually betrayed her. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was her father's face, crumpled with guilt and self-loathing, as he watched his only daughter disappear. Ava woke to the purr of an engine and the smell of leather. Her head throbbed, her mouth tasted like copper, and when she tried to move, she discovered her wrists were zip-tied together. Panic flooded through her as consciousness returned. She was in the back of a luxury car, some sleek black vehicle with tinted windows and seats softer than her bed at home. The lean man sat beside her, scrolling through his phone with casual indifference. The concrete wall drove. Where are you taking me? Ava's voice came out hoarse. Where are we going? Monaco, the man said without looking up. You'll want to stay quiet and cooperative. Things will be much easier for everyone. Monaco? That's another country. You can't just kidnap people across international borders. And yet here we are. He finally glanced at her, and his smile was pure ice. I suggest you save your energy, Miss Bellini. You'll need it for what comes next. Terror crystallized into something sharp and cold in Ava's chest. She stared out the window, watching the Italian countryside blur into French highway, then the winding coastal roads that led to the principality. Questions multiplied in her mind, each more horrifying than the last. What did they plan to do with her? Would they force her to work off her father's debt? How long would that take? Years? Decades? The alternative possibilities were too terrible to consider. They arrived in Monaco after midnight. Ava had been to the tiny nation once, on a school trip, marveling at the ostentatious wealth on display. Now being dragged from the car into an underground garage beneath a building that screamed money, she saw only menace in the glittering excess. Move! The large man hauled her toward an elevator, her zip-tied hands making balance impossible. They ascended in silence. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway lined with art that probably cost more than her father's entire lifetime earnings. At the end, double doors stood guarded by 2 more men in dark suits. They nodded to her captors and stepped aside. The doors opened onto a nightmare masquerading as luxury. The space beyond resembled a private auction house. All marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and velvet curtains, the color of old blood. Rows of leather chairs faced a raised platform, and those chairs were filling with men. Wealthy men, powerful men, men whose tailored suits and cold eyes marked them as predators who'd never known consequence. A woman in an evening gown that probably cost what Ava made in a year approached them, her smile professionally blank. Catalog number 17. You're just in time. They're about to begin. Ava tried to pull away, but the concrete wall's grip was absolute. What is this? What's happening? The lean man finally showed genuine emotion, amusement. Surely you've figured it out by now, Miss Bellini. You're the merchandise. This is where we recover our losses. Before she could scream, before she could fight or run or do anything, she was pushed through a side door into a small holding room. 5 other women waited there, all around her age, all wearing the same expression of terrified disbelief. Some cried silently. Others stared at nothing, shock rendering them blank. A woman in a severe black suit entered, clipboard in hand. Listen carefully. You will go onto the platform when called. You will stand where you're told. You will not speak unless directly addressed. Any outburst, any attempt to flee will result in immediate punishment. Am I understood? No one answered. The reality was too enormous, too impossible. I said, "Am I understood?" A chorus of broken whispers. Yes. Good. First up. Number 12. Ava watched a girl no older than 20 be led through the curtains onto the platform. Through the gap, she could hear the auctioneer's smooth voice, the rustle of men settling into their seats, the horrifying normalcy of it all, as if they were bidding on art or racehorses instead of human beings. 300,000 euros? Do I hear 350? Ava's knees buckled. Someone caught her. Another girl, maybe 19, with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. "Breathe," she whispered. "If you pass out, they'll just drag you up there anyway." This can't be real. This can't be happening. I thought the same thing 3 hours ago. One by one, the women were led onto the platform. One by one, Ava heard the bids, the casual discussion of terms, the crisp strike of the auctioneer's hammer. Sold, sold, sold. Then they called number 17. The severe woman gripped Ava's arm. "Show time, darling. Try to look pretty. It'll fetch a better price." Ava's legs refused to cooperate. She was half dragged through the curtains onto the platform, and the lights hit her like a physical force. Beyond the glare, she could make out maybe 30 men seated in the audience. Older men, mostly. Men who looked at her the way someone might appraise a painting, with detached interest and cold calculation. "Lot 17, the auctioneer announced, his voice cultured and pleasant, as if describing a piece of antique furniture. 22 years old, Milan origin, university educated. Catalog lists her as particularly skilled in creative pursuits, literature, art, etc. Excellent health, no significant medical history. Shall we start the bidding at 200,000 euros? Ava's vision swam. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Any moment she'd wake up in her bed in Porta Romana, late for class, laughing at the absurdity of the nightmare. 200,000 from bidder 7, but the nightmare didn't end. The bids climbed, 250, 300, 400,000 euros. Men raising numbered paddles as casually as if ordering wine. Ava searched the faces she could see, looking for something human, some flicker of conscience or compassion. She found only appetite and greed. 600,000 from bidder 12. Ava's breathing came too fast, too shallow. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. She was going to pass out. She was going to collapse on this platform while strangers decided her fate, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. 750,000 from bidder 19. The auctioneer smiled. Excellent. Do I hear 800,000? The double doors at the back of the auction hall exploded open. Every head turned. The auctioneer's smile froze. Even Ava, trapped in her spiral of panic, felt the shift in the room, the way the atmosphere changed from predatory to prey in a single heartbeat. A man entered, and the world seemed to contract around him. He stood at least 6 feet tall, his frame all lean muscle and coiled power beneath a suit that probably cost more than the combined wealth in this room. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from brutal elegance, sharp cheekbones, a jaw that looked like it could break stone, and eyes so dark they were almost black. But it wasn't his appearance that made grown men shrink in their seats. It was the aura of absolute, unquestionable authority that preceded him like a tidal wave. 2 men flanked him, clearly bodyguards, clearly lethal, but they were mere shadows. Everything about the stranger demanded attention, commanded submission. He moved down the center aisle with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything, never been challenged without consequences so severe they became legend. Dante Rinaldi, someone whispered, the name carrying the weight of myth and terror. Even through her shock, Ava knew that name. Everyone in Italy knew that name, though it was rarely spoken above a whisper. Dante Rinaldi, the ghost of Naples, the merchant of death, the man who controlled criminal enterprises from Sicily to Switzerland. Politicians feared him. Rival families avoided him. Entire organizations had collapsed under the weight of his displeasure, and he was walking straight toward the platform. The auctioneer recovered his composure, though his smile had become brittle. Mr. Rinaldi, what an unexpected pleasure. If you're interested in this lot, you're welcome to... How much? Dante's voice was winter-given sound. Cold, sharp, absolute. I'm sorry? How much to end this auction right now? The auctioneer blinked. The current bid is 750,000 euros, but I'm sure if we continue, $100 million. The room went silent. Not the ordinary quiet of people pausing conversation, but the absolute absence of sound that follows statements so shocking they stop hearts mid-beat. Excuse me? The auctioneer's professional mask cracked completely. Dante Rinaldi didn't repeat himself. He simply climbed the steps onto the platform, 3 long strides that brought him face to face with Eva for the first time. Up close, he was even more devastating. Not handsome in any conventional sense, but compelling in the way natural disasters were compelling. Impossible to look away from, impossible to forget. His dark eyes met hers, and Eva felt the impact like a physical touch. There was intelligence in that gaze, calculation, and something else she couldn't identify. He studied her for 3 long seconds, taking in her paint-stained jeans, her oversized cardigan, the terror written across her face. Then he turned back to the auctioneer. $100 million wired to your accounts within the hour. The auction ends now. She comes with me. Are we clear? Mr. Rinaldi, I don't have the authority to... Then get someone who does. Dante's voice never rose above conversational, but the threat in it was unmistakable. You have 60 seconds. The auctioneer's hand shook as he pulled out his phone. Somewhere in the audience, a man cleared his throat. Rinaldi, this is highly irregular. The auction has rules. Dante's bodyguard moved, and the man's protest died instantly. 45 seconds, Dante said. Eva watched this unfold in dreamlike detachment. The auctioneer spoke rapidly into his phone, his face pale. The men in the audience shifted uncomfortably, torn between outrage at the disruption and terror of the man causing it. Nobody moved to challenge him. Nobody dared. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. The auctioneer lowered his phone, and his professional smile had been replaced by something closer to nausea. The owners accept your offer, Mr. Rinaldi. The lot is yours. Excellent. Dante reached into his jacket and produced a phone of his own, typing something quickly. Funds are transferring now. I trust there will be no complications with paperwork? No, sir. No complications. Good. Then Dante turned to Eva, and she finally understood what it meant to be truly seen. His dark eyes held hers, and she felt stripped bare. Every fear, every dream, every secret thought exposed under that unflinching gaze. What's your name? He asked, and his voice was almost gentle. Almost. Eva. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Eva Bellini. Eva. He tested the name like a sommelier testing wine. Then he reached out and, with surprising care, cut the zip ties binding her wrists. The plastic fell away, leaving red marks on her skin. Come with me. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even really a command. It was simply a statement of what would happen next, as inevitable as gravity. Eva's mind screamed at her to run, to fight, to do anything but follow this dangerous stranger who'd just paid $100 million for ownership of her life. But her body, still trembling with shock and fear, obeyed. She took one step down from the platform, then another. Dante's hand came to rest on the small of her back. Not gripping, not forcing, just guiding. And she felt the heat of his touch through her thin sweater like a brand. They walked through the auction hall together. The men in the audience parted like water before a ship's prow. Nobody spoke. Nobody protested. They simply watched as Dante Rinaldi claimed his purchase and disappeared through the double doors with Eva Bellini at his side. The last thing Eva saw before the doors closed was the auctioneer's face, relief and terror in equal measure, as the man who'd nearly sold her to the highest bidder realized exactly whose attention he'd just attracted. The parking garage beneath the building held dozens of expensive vehicles, but Dante led her to a black Maserati that looked like it cost more than her entire neighborhood. One of his bodyguards opened the rear door. Get in, Dante said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Eva hesitated for 1 heartbeat. 2. Then she climbed into the car because what choice did she have? Where could she run? Who would help her? Dante slid in beside her. The The leather seats were cream-colored and impossibly soft. The interior smelled of expensive cologne and something darker, gunmetal and danger. The car pulled out of the garage smoothly, climbing into Monaco's glittering night. Ava pressed herself against the door, putting as much distance between herself and Dante as the confined space allowed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every muscle in her body screamed danger, predator, run. "Where are you taking me?" she managed. "Home," Dante said simply, not looking at her. He'd pulled out his phone again and was typing something, his expression carved from stone. "I want to go back to Milan. I want to go home." "That's not your home anymore." The casual certainty in his voice ignited something in Ava, a spark of anger that burned through the fear and shock. "You can't just kidnap me. What you did back there, buying me like I'm some kind of object, that's illegal. It's slavery. I have rights. You had rights." Now Dante did look at her, and the intensity of his gaze stole her breath. "The moment your father signed those papers, you became collateral. The moment I paid $100 million, you became mine. That's not an opinion, Ava Bellini. That's a fact. My father had no right. Your father gambled away everything he had and then borrowed from people who don't forgive debt. He offered you a surety, signed legal documents, and collected money based on that promise. When he couldn't pay, his creditors came to collect. That's how this works. That's insane. That's reality." Dante's expression didn't change. "You can rage against it all you want. You can cry and scream and plot escape. None of it will change what you are now." "And what's that?" "Mine." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Ava couldn't bear to examine. She turned away, staring out the tinted window as Monaco gave way to the French coast, the Mediterranean stretching dark and endless beneath the stars. They drove for hours. Ava must have dozed at some point because she jerked awake to find dawn breaking over the sea and the car climbing a winding road into the hills. In the growing light, she could make out a structure ahead, a massive estate perched on the cliffs, all pale stone and ancient architecture, surrounded by high walls and clearly modern security. "What is this place?" she whispered. "Your new home," Dante said. "The Villa Rinaldi. It's been in my family for 200 years. The gates opened automatically as they approached, and the Maserati pulled into a courtyard that belonged in a magazine about European castles. Fountains, gardens, colonnades, all of it gleaming in the early morning light. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was a prison dressed up as paradise. Dante exited the car and circled around to open Ava's door himself, a gesture of courtesy that felt absurd given the circumstances. "Come." Ava climbed out on shaking legs. The Mediterranean wind